Sit with me as my new assistant lights this here sandalwood. Relax. Relax. You know, this reminds me of my conception. It was 1901, Hong Kong. Beautiful city. The minute I was born, I set off, having heard the great horn of the Russian flagship Knyaz Suvorov calling. Swimming 10,000 miles, I eventually intercepted the Russian fleet heading north to break the siege at Port Arthur. I managed to climb aboard the Imperator Alexander III, where I immediately began the sale of my favourite incense, the sandalwood. Unfortunately, as we travelled north, the uncultured Russians' refusal to purchase my exquisite wares played on my mind. By the time we'd made battle with the Japanese fleet, I was decided. Lighting a pyre of clothes in the engine room, I jumped overboard. It sank with all hands. From there, I swam to the nearest Japanese vessel, the Mikasa, and climbed aboard. I was greeted by the captain and swiftly delivered to the Emperor Meiji himself. Entering his hall, I, naturally, refused to bow before him, and was delighted to see his own refusal in kind, an equal at last. One night, while partying in Meiji's palatial crib, the soju got to my head, and I agreed to travel to China in order to destabilize domestic politics sufficiently for a successful Japanese invasion. And that's how I came to know Chairman Mao. Of course, he wasn't a chairman at this time, but I knew he had potential. So, naturally, I resumed sale of my sandalwood. Its dulcet tangs successfully ingratiated me into their simple family life. From there, I tutored the boy in the classics, and successfully prevented him from experiencing female affection by encouraging him to reject his arranged marriage, thus developing his Sigma grind set. Growing tired of the mediocre peasant life, I travelled to Turkey, as I heard it was a fine location for the sampling of incenses. Crossroads of the world and all. However, when I got there, the ports were all blockaded and the beaches were full of soldiers. Quite the inconvenience, if you ask me. I spoke to a chap named Birdwood. Fine fellow, but slightly misguided. He told me the best way to get into Turkey would be to sign up with the Corps. He was wrong, however. I learned this the hard way by sitting in a muddy rat-run trench for 2 hours. It would be a lot easier to sign up with the other Corps. So, I hopped on over to the other trench and handed out sandalwood samples until I was properly accepted. Over the course of the summer, I assumed command of the defence of Baby 700 under Mr. Ataturk. After the war, I negotiated settlements between Ataturk and the British, securing the Turkish state as a regional player, preventing Greek seizure of Istanbul, and ensuring Turkey maintained the Ottoman monopoly over the incense trade. During these luncheons, I developed my taste for Turkish bread, which I have retained to this day. Regardless, after my summer in Turkey, I headed back to China, where my mission to destabilize the state continued. But that is a story for another time, so if you'll allow me to return to my sandalwood.